Hello, my name is Eric and I'm doing another one of my photography vlogs called One Body, One Lens, One Roll, One Day. I am here at Chippewa Inlet, North Inlet to Chippewa Lake. I've been here a couple times before. It's always a nice place to come around and walk. I've come here when it's been winter time. It is now midsummer. It is a nice Saturday, July morning. Sky is nice and blue, lots of big poofy clouds in the sky. Should have brought my polarizer. Don't have it for the right size of the lens I'm using today. Today's camera is a Nikon N4004S with a Quantum-Ray 70-210. Today's film is some bulk loaded Kodak TriX 400 with an unknown expiration date. I'm going to pull it back 2 stops or overexpose it by 2 stops for those people who don't know what pulling back means. And it is a roll of 36 exposure. So I'm going to load it up real quick. Be right back. All right, this camera's got an issue. She doesn't want to load the film. All right, let me find another camera. I'll be right back. Okay, whenever I do these vlog episodes, I always make sure I've got a spare camera with me, just in case that happens. So I'm switching out that Nikon N4004, which has a problem loading the film. And I'm going to a Pentax P30 with a Tamron Adaptol lens. It is a 35 to 80 f2.8 to 3.8, so a lot faster than normal. Being the normal lens would be a 4 to 5.6 or something similar to that. This is a 2.8 to 3.5. All right, I'm going to load this one up. Hopefully there's no issues. And we'll go take some photos. Be right back. Okay, so Pentax's P30 has a DX code reader in the camera, so it normally reads your film speed. However, this is a bulk loaded roll of film, so it doesn't have that black and silver checker pattern on it. The sticker on it says TriX 400, which is totally fine, but it's also about, I'm guessing, 20 years out of date because it came in with some other stuff that was about 20 to 22 years out of date. So when a DX camera can't read the DX code on the canister, one of 2 things can happen. One, the camera will default to ISO 100, which is fine for what I'm doing because it gives me 2 stops overexposure to correct for the age of the film. The other way to do it would be if the camera has a ISO override, and then you can dial it to whatever ISO you want versus whatever the ISO of the film actually is. And that's good for bulk loading films and stuff like that. All right, now we're ready. Let's go down that way. Be right back. All right, today just might be an oops episode because I thought the film was winding, so I went to tighten it up a little bit so I could see the counter spin on the winder, and I accidentally rounded all the way inside the canister. So now I don't have my leader retriever with me, so I've got to switch out films. All right, let's try this again. Be right back. Okay, so I reloaded it with some expired TriX 400 from a box, about 20 years old. So normally I would make a 2-stop exposure compensation adjustment. However, 2 things. One, this camera does not have ISO override, so I've got to shoot it like that at 400. Plus the fact that this was from a box or a bag of donated film that the photographer said was frozen. So hopefully I don't need to make any adjustments. I'm just going to go shoot it straight up at 400. 20 years old. Let's see what the negs give me. All right, now that we've jump-started this episode by switching cameras and switching films, let's go down the path. All right, so as I mentioned, this is a Tamron 35 to 80, 2.8 to 3.5? 2.8 to 3.8 Adaptol series. Now, what the Adaptol series is that Tamron, back in the 80s, made a series of lenses that you could actually change the lens mount on. That way they could do 2 things. One, they wouldn't have to make 20 different versions of this lens. They didn't have to do a Nikon, a Canon, a Pentax, a Konica, a Minolta mount version. They just made one version. And then all you had to do was get the mount for it. And then when you got the lens, you got the appropriate lens mount. And if you wanted to switch camera systems, you just bought another mount, transfer the lens over. It's kind of like mounting a lens onto a body, except for it's not red dots, it's green dots. So find your green dot match up, snap it on, you're good to go. So there was a nice thing back in the 80s is that, you know, it was pretty much the closest thing to a universal lens system as there was back in the time. The other cool thing about this lens is it actually has one heck of a macro depending upon where you're at in your zoom. At the 35 zone, I can get to a 1:3, which is typically standard for some of these old cameras. But if I take it to 80, I can actually get all the way, you know, down to maybe a 1.25 and, you know, get a little closer ratio for macro. So that was kind of cool. It's kind of different than the typical zoom macro, but you could only go so far depending upon where you're at. Alrighty, I'm gonna head down that path. I'm on shot 14 of 36. All right, let me go see what I can get. Now with all this greenery going on, I could have brought my green filter, which would have slowed me down maybe 2 stops. But then in black and white, which is what I'm shooting, instead of a nice mid-gray tone that you would see here and here and here, all this green would go much lighter, actually almost to probably the same shade as the path. You could even maybe come close to an infrared effect, depending upon your exposure and stuff like that, making that kind of greenery go a lot lighter than it normally would. So now I'm not saying you can fake out an infrared, but you can come really close to faking out an infrared on a green day with a green filter. All right, let me keep going down the path. Be right back. All right, so the P30 was also known as the P3 or P30T, P30N. It was a couple variations of the same camera. Came out in the mid-1980s, about 1985, as a more all aperture or metered manual where the camera suggests your setting, but you can pick it accordingly. Again, did use the DX coding. You could recognize from speeds 25 to 3200, which was the common films back then. But just like every other DX code camera, if it doesn't know the film or if it doesn't recognize the film, you know, there's no DX code. Maybe it's bulk loaded like, you know, I had problems with earlier. It would default to 100 ISO, which in that case would have been fine. But if you are shooting expired film a lot like I do, I can't make any manual adjustments. Otherwise, maybe going to manual, taking the suggested shutter speed and slowing it down 2 stops. So making some manual corrections rather than letting the camera make some corrections for me. All right, kind of the same age as the Nikon FGs, FG20s, kind of king of the all manual cameras that were out there. I mean, you had the Minolta X series, XGs, you had Canon AVs, ATs, and AE1s are all out there. Again, a lot of these all manual cameras. Some had full aperture priority, no manual, like the EM or the, it was a Canon, and I'm drawing a blank on it. You get a metered manual like this guy right here, or you can go full manual like some of the other cameras. All right, I'm gonna keep going down that path. Let me go see what I can get. All right, so Kodak's got a couple different black and white films that are out there. There's their TriX, which is what I've got, even though it's expired. They still make the TriX films. They also have the T-Max series of films. Both have some slower speed stuff and some faster speed stuff. Actually, you don't see much of the slower speed TriX variant called Plus X. That was a 125 speed. You don't see much of that anymore. But they still make the TriX 400. And the difference between, let's say, a TriX 400 and a T-Max 400, which is more, I don't want to call it their more professional film, but a lot of people seem to think it was more their professional lineup, is that if you were hand developing, i.e. you're a student learning, you got your own home darkroom or something like that, TriX films are a little bit more lenient when it comes to your water temperature if you're doing your dip and dunk and you know, you're pulling water out of your faucet or what do you got, purified water or distilled water to make your chemistry. If it wasn't in an exact temperature, let's say it called for 68 degrees at, you know, 5-6 minutes of agitation, If it was a degree or two off or you agitated too long, you know, TriX film had that latitude. T-Max was a little bit more picky on color, sorry, not color, but a little bit more picky on the water temperature because of the grain that was involved, the T grain. Very sharp, very nice and contrasty, but really liked the T-Max developer and really liked, you know, everything locked in. Where TriX, if I use some of the other developers that were out there, say D76 or HC110 or Ilford's got a couple, and Agfa used to have some. I've drawn the blank, so the Agfa stuff's been discontinued for quite some time. The TriX film was a little bit more lenient. If you use different chemistries and stuff like that, you would still get pretty decent results. All right, I am on shot 26 out of 36. I'm gonna head that way. Let's go see what I can get. All right, so I shot my last shot. I saw a bee on some flowers, and let's see how this macro turns out. All right, so I can't wind anymore without breaking the film. I'm gonna push the button in, which is actually missing the black tab, but I can push it in anyway. Worst case, I take it to a darkroom and take the film out. And I rewind it. And as many winds or as many shots as you had is about as many rewinds as you'll have. So this is a roll of 36. So this will take about 36 rewinds. And should be right about, there it goes, I let go. All right, so today's camera was a Pentax P30 with a Tamron 35-80 2.8-3, so a little bit faster than normal. Today's film was some expired but supposedly frozen Kodak TriX 400, so I shot it at-rated for two reasons. One, because it was told it was frozen. Two, the P30 does not have ISO override, so I did some shots that were probably a little overexposed watching the manual correction. We'll see what happens. My legs are probably going to be all over the place on this one. All right, if I get photos or if I get good photos, feel free to give them a thumbs up. Feel free to comment on your experience with the Kodak P3, P30, P30T series of cameras, or with your Tamron Adaptol lens. There's a really cool 180 2.8, I think. That's a really cool one. You can find like the anniversary edition, but you can find Adaptol mounts for just about every one of them, for about every one of the different brands of cameras that are out there. All right, feel free to share if it's a cool episode. Feel free to subscribe as new episodes try to come out every Friday and Saturday with bonus episodes happening every now and then. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next episode.